Port of Tacoma Road was shut down for some time tonight after that shooting. Authorities are telling us that this all began with a fender bender that turned into a road rage situation with a person who may have been under the influence. Taking a look inside the cab of the semi now, you can see where bullets pierced the windshield of the semi and then also sprayed along the rest of the truck. Amazingly, even looking at that, the driver of the semi truck was not struck by a bullet and was not hurt this evening. He is doing okay. We spoke to authorities earlier. They told us that the driver who opened fire stuck around at the scene, called 911, and then was arrested at the scene when officers arrived on the scene. You can see from above the number of shots that were fired, aerials showing just the number of markers, evidence markers, tracking the number of bullets that were fired. Authorities say it's possible that other people may have been struck as they were passing in heavy traffic tonight. That is still unclear. Here's what authorities had to say about that.
At the mouth of this ramp, or where it begins, it is a two-lane ramp. So there is the potential that there could have been other vehicles traveling alongside that were potentially struck. Thankfully, we have received zero reports of that and have zero reason to believe that anybody else is involved. And luckily, nobody's injured.
Again, the accident resulting in the ramp being closed for hours tonight. It's unclear exactly what kind of impairment the driver may have been under, but again, authorities are saying that there is evidence that there was some sort of impairment here. Reporting in Tacoma, Kristen Ayers, King 5 News.